You know what they say, payback is a bitch, and this payback is going to be one big Joy Behar. Zero evidence doesn't matter, because the first Trump impeachment, there was more evidence for Bigfoot, and the media gobbled it up like a bowl of Xanax and spaghetti. So it's your turn in the barrel. You better get used to it. I'm against impeachment.
All right, so according to Greg Gutfeld, it doesn't matter that there is zero evidence for the impeachment of Joe Biden. And to be sure, as it stands today, there is no evidence of wrongdoing by Joe Biden to even lead to an impeachment inquiry. But he's okay with that because Trump got impeached, not once, twice. And Biden should too, because payback, okay. And by the way, there was plenty of evidence to impeach Trump the first time and the second time, but he was referring to the first time there. And it was the perfect phone call that Trump made to Zelensky, essentially engaging in a quid pro quo, where Trump withheld congressionally appropriated funds for military aid to Ukraine, and Trump would not release it until Zelensky agreed to announce a sham investigation into Joe Biden in order to get a leg up for the 2020 presidential election. There was a ton of evidence. I remember covering that story and following it very closely, but whatever, that's beside the point. Now, it's surprising for a right winger and a commentator like Greg Gutfeld to give away the game like that. I mean, he's just saying the quiet parts out loud. But one conservative personality actually took it a step further and outright admitted that the whole impeachment circus is pointless, but he will allow it. So let's watch.
So we're not gonna knock Joe Biden out of office by doing these impeachment proceedings. Democrats hold the Senate, and they have to do a trial. The only reason to impeach Biden is just for the symbolism of it. And of course, there's an argument to be made to force the press to cover the evidence and the allegations against the Biden crime family. That's fine. But the only victory, if it happens to produce a political advantage, that's it.
Just giving the whole game away. I mean, look, I for one am happy to see that Congress is finally doing something other than fundraising. I mean, God forbid they pass legislation that improves Americans' lives. But at least, they're taking a little bit of time away from fundraising to, I guess, engage in sham impeachment inquiries.
I mean, there's nothing to even add to that. He's literally saying the entire playbook. We don't even have to add analysis. He's telling us that it's a sham. He's literally saying we should engage in a sham mockery right now. And it'll be great because optics or something or symbols. And allegedly Republican voters are supposed to get on board. And here's the problem for Charlie Kirk. And I think even those idiots on Fox and Friends, I really do that sometimes their contempt for their audience leads them down the wrong path sometimes. And they just think these people are just dumb enough to just take anything, like literally anything that they give them and take it to be gospel and fact. Like, I don't think their constituents are gonna gobble this impeachment stuff up and think that it's great. I really don't. I truly think that people have a basic, even working people who don't pay as much attention to politics as you and I do. They have a basic understanding of what something that might be an impeachable offense. And if the Republicans don't deliver the goods, they're not going to be impressed by the symbolism of the impeachment.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, all of this is genuinely cheapening the whole idea of impeachment. And one of our viewers in our Twitch community made that point. So altruism is imaginary says, when Clinton was impeached, it seemed like a really big deal and a rare occurrence. Now it's just a Tuesday. It's so true. I mean, it made headlines yesterday, of course, when Kevin McCarthy announced the impeachment inquiry. But, it wasn't wall-to-wall coverage. And I think that's saying something. I just think it has cheapened the whole process. And it's sad because I think that it's another symptom of this two-party system that's been captured by corporate interests and corporate money. On a lot of these substantive bread and butter issues, there's a lot of agreement. I'm not saying that the two parties are the same. I think that's wrong to say. But there are similarities between the two parties in regard to carrying out what moneyed interests want. And so instead, they focus their energy on distractions, on culture wars, on investigations, on sham impeachment inquiries. It's just sad because in the end of the day, the people who end up losing the most are people like us, right? Ordinary people, workers, individuals who feel neglected and crushed by the system. And again, that's the reason why you look at polling in regard to how Americans feel about Congress and the job they're doing. And I feel like every year that approval rating goes lower and lower and lower. And I don't blame them for feeling that way. Most of my frustration toward the federal government has to do with Congress and just how pathetic they are. Every single time I see a Republican member of Congress complain about immigration, it's like, yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be awesome if you were in a position of power to change that, like legislatively? But I guess going on Twitter is just the same, right? It's ridiculous. Anyway, but let's move on. So Charlie Kirk also took a weird turn during his whole spiel about the impeachment because he believes Republicans are actually going ahead with the impeachment of Joe Biden to distract from other things. So what does he mean there? Let's watch.
It's that old Latin phrase, cui bono. Who benefits from this impeachment inquiry, which itself is not even impeachment? Why the sudden urgency? The answer is obvious. Moderate Republicans don't want to cut Jack Smith's funding. Moderate Republicans do not want to limit Zelensky's funding. Moderate Republicans do not want to close the border. So a concession they're making is, just throw the right wingers on the Charlie Kirk show, on Steve Bannon, on Jack Posobiec, throw them a little bit of a bone where they have an impeachment inquiry. They're trying to make you care about 9/30 less.
And 9/30 is September 30th, and that's the date in which Congress needs to pass a bill to fund the government, or else we're gonna deal with government shutdowns. Government shutdowns, I don't know if it would have a direct impact on the resources necessary to push forward with an impeachment inquiry. I don't know if Kevin McCarthy is trying to dangle that above the heads of people like Representative Matt Gaetz in order to get him to cooperate and pass the legislation to fund the government. I have no idea, but believe it or not, I do think that there might be a little bit of truth to what Charlie Kirk was saying there in his grandma's home with the floral curtains that I enjoy.
One thing he needs to understand though, that Zelensky money, that's happening whether we like it, you like it or not, because there is a bipartisan consensus, right? And I need folks to understand that when you see that $1 billion quote unquote Ukraine aid, it's not $1 billion that Vlad Zelensky gets, and he gets to disseminate it amongst the troops and this, and he gets to figure stuff out. It's literally just corporate welfare. We go to the defense manufacturing companies, we say, here, we're gonna buy stuff from you, have your profits soar, and we'll give some of that stuff to the Ukraine. That's all it is. And trust me, I think our foreign policy apparatus has a vested interest in, sort of greasing the skids for Russia at every turn. I'm sure they're interested in that for sure. But on the main, this Ukraine money is just corporate welfare. It just goes to spend money with the defense manufacturers. It's just a wealth transfer. That's all that is. And there is a bipartisan consensus on the utility of that. And so that's gonna happen no matter what. Charlie Kirk, Anna Kasparian, or me or anybody else has to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I definitely think that the interests of the defense contractors tend to reign supreme in situations like this. I do think the US has other interests at play, weakening Russia as an example, and I don't blame them for wanting to do that. At the same time, I think that they're concerned that allowing Russia to do whatever it wants would signal to China that it can do whatever it wants with Taiwan. So look, there are legitimate reasons why US foreign policy in this regard is, desired by most members of Congress, and it goes outside of just the moneyed interests at play. But overall, I think the through line in most of our geopolitics is the moneyed interest, is the defense and weapons manufacturers, defense contractors and weapons manufacturers. So you definitely have a point there. But just quickly going back to the admission that the Republican Party has no evidence to actually pursue the impeachment of Joe Biden. It's not just Greg Gutfeld, it's not just Charlie Kirk. Several House Republicans have said as much themselves, including David Joyce. When asked about Marjorie Taylor Greene's recent comments regarding an impeachment inquiry, Representative David Joyce tells Forbes he is not seeing facts or evidence at this point that would lead to an impeachment inquiry, and he says those calls are premature. Dusty Johnson agrees. Representative Dusty Johnson told CNN that, quote, there is a constitutional and legal test that you have to meet with evidence, end quote, when it comes to impeachment, and that he has not seen any evidence. There's Don Bacon. I think before we move on to an impeachment inquiry, there should be a direct link to the president in some evidence. And finally, Ken Buck, who's been the most vocal against the impeachment inquiry, said, the time for impeachment is the time when there's evidence linking President Biden, and I don't think that evidence has been presented. But they're moving forward with it anyway. And I think these Republican lawmakers understand that the pursuit of this impeachment could actually backfire on them politically. So I do think that it's really about their own self-interest as opposed to protecting Joe Biden. But we'll see how this all plays out. I mean, again, this is what legislating has devolved to, just sham investigations, tit for tat. It's ridiculous.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.